Welcome back, third grade scientists. This week, you will be learning about adaptive technology and the way that it helps individuals with disabilities or impairments that affect their senses. So let's take a look at some examples of some adaptive technology. First, we have to wrap our brains around what is adaptive technology. Well, adaptive technology are special versions of already existing technologies. So, in other words, scientists and developers take something that exists already in technology and make changes to it in order to help individuals that have disabilities or impairments so that they can use the technology and accomplish the task. They they use existing technologies or tools that provide enhancements or different ways of interacting with the technology. The adaptation helps people with a disability or an impairment to accomplish a task. Let's take a look at two examples of a very simple adaptive technology and a more complex or complicated adaptive technology. One example of something simple is just creating this table that allows individuals who do not have a mobility disability or somebody that needs to use a wheelchair all be able to sit at the same space and access these computers. Creating this table is an adaptive technology. It allows all of these individuals to use the technology in the same way, interact with the technology, and complete the task, whether they need a wheelchair or not. That's a very simple adaptive technology. Here, you see a Braille keyboard that's been attached to a regular keyboard in order for the user with a visual impairment to be able to interact with the computer and use the keyboard. So this Braille keyboard is an example of a more complex adaptive technology. Let's take a look at more examples. One very important and very common adaptive technology is called a screen reader. Screen readers are software programs that allow blind or visually impaired users to read the text that is displayed on the computer screen with a speech synthesizer or a braille display. The user sends commands by pressing different combinations of keys on the computer keyboard to instruct the speech synthesizer what to say. It can tell it to read or spell a word. It can tell it to read a full screen of text. It can tell it to describe a picture. It can also help the user locate an item on the screen and much more. Here are some examples of different ways to use a screen reader. So here you see an individual using a screen reader with a special type of keyboard, possibly a Braille keyboard. Or here you see a user using a screen reader just from the original keyboard. He is able to use the keys and press commands in order for the screen to highlight and read certain parts for him. So screen readers, because they're software programs, they can look different across different computers and needs of the user. A personal FM system. Well, a personal FM unit can be used in the classroom for students with a hearing impairment. The FM system can send a teacher's voice from a wireless microphone worn by the teacher through FM radio waves directly to a small receiver worn by the student with hearing loss. The benefits of using an FM unit are they can be connected to a hearing aid or they can be used as a headset or speaker. They're portable and easy to take from one classroom to another or even use outside of the classroom. Let's take a look at an example. Here you see a teacher wearing the unit around her neck, but when you look at it, these students, you probably can't even tell which student needs it. So it's a very discreet technology, a very easy to use technology, and it helps the learner or student with a hearing impairment very much. They don't have to ask questions. It helps them to hear better without the teacher really not having to do anything more than wear that FM unit. And finally, a much more complicated adaptive technology is called a SIPP and PUF system. So when I say the words sip and puff, think about what you would do. If you're sipping a drink, you might do this. Breathe in. And if you puff, you're puffing out a small bit of air. Those two simple motions are part of the sip and puff system, and they're used by students who have mobility challenges, such as some kind of paralysis or fine motor skill disability. These systems allow for control of a computer, mobile device, or some other technological application by the child moving the device with his or her mouth. Similar to a joystick like you might use for a video game, the child or adult or user can move the controller in any direction and click on various navigational tools using either a sip or puff. These systems are used to replace a computer keyboard or mouse because the user is not physically able to touch a computer keyboard or mouse and make it work the way it needs to. So these sip and puff systems can look very different. Here, this is an example of what they might look like. So here you see this student or girl wearing it simply around her ear, right? And it hooks right into her mouth. And with that sip and puff motion, she can control the computer from that device. Or here you see this gentleman in a wheelchair. He's also wearing a similar sip and puff device around his mouth, but you can see it's connected to his computer. So he's unable to use the keyboard with his hands or arms, but by using this device that's in his mouth, he can interact with the computer and have it do what he needs it to do in order to complete a task. So these adaptive technologies take an existing technology and make changes to them so that they are accessible to all users, no matter their impairment or disability. But third grade scientists, remember, these adaptive technologies were all created by inventors. And remember, we've talked about inventors and how they are our everyday superheroes. So don't forget to celebrate inventors because they are our most important celebrities. And I think anybody using these adaptive technologies would agree. Great learning, keep exploring all kinds of adaptive technologies and think about how helpful they are to everyone. Good luck, keep learning, third grade scientists.